Hey guys, welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Show. Tonight we are going to be having on our man Gilbert Manzano talking about the Rams game. Going to be diving into all of the matchups, but first, our guys at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett along with my partner in crime Aaron Quinn. Aaron, we've made it through the dark winter of off season.
Yes, sir.
We have real football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know me. I'm a big fan of Christmas, right? And Christmas Eve is like the pinnacle part of the climax of the excitement of Christmas. That's what this is for football for me, right? The night before game day here. Tough to sleep. I will say it's a little bit better. This is maybe the only time not having that Sunday 1 o'clock is better because I'm going to go to bed tonight at regular. I'm going to do the show. We'll process all the stuff for the show, and I'm going to go to bed sort of regular with a lot of excitement. But for the 1 o'clock, I can't sleep the night before. It's like that type of excitement. So good that we have a full regular day. I got to bring my kids to school. It's Bills Day here in Western New York. So I got the kids' jerseys and stuff all laid out. We're excited. Nice. It's a good time to be in Western New York. And hopefully that party continues through on the next 24 hours beyond.
Oh, let's hope. Let's hope.
Right.
I think, with the game going on tomorrow, there's a lot of added pressure that kind of goes along.
Can
with
there be more pressure?
We'll talk about it tonight that, with everything that's kind of built into this, all the expectations, watching the other team get their Super Bowl rings. It's a weird dynamic that you're adding in there. But what better way to talk about that than our man from the OC Register, host of the House of Horns podcast, Gilbert Manzano. Gilbert, how we doing, sir?
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me on the show, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to sit up here and boost about Josh Allen.
You and Jalen Ramsey both.
No, just kidding. Josh Allen is awesome, but Jalen Ramsey quote said that yesterday.
Yeah, it's interesting. So tell us a little bit about, this transition now going from a team that was kind of in a similar spot to the Bills where there had been a lot of all-in moves, a lot of big investments, but hadn't quite gotten over the hump to now being the hunted instead of the hunter, getting the rings tomorrow and now defending that title at home and being in that position. What has that done to expectations for this season?
Yeah, to kind of start off the first part of the question, I think they're in that defense mode. I think that's why Jalen Ramsey is so guarded. Hey, you keep talking about the Bills, Josh Allen, they're grading on Stephon Diggs, but we just won the Super Bowl. So I think that's kind of part of the defense. But in terms of the pressure, the mentality, I think it kind of helps the Rams in terms of the motivation. Yeah, that the Bills are being picked to win the game, 2.5 points from Las Vegas. But then nobody's done the repeat thing since the Patriots from 2003, 2004, long time. And they want to be the first ones to do it. And when you have guys like Jalen Ramsey, who's very competitive, Aaron Donald, of course, very competitive. Bobby Wagner, who came so close to repeating as champions until Malcolm Butler got in the way. Matthew Stafford, couldn't get it done in Detroit for 13 years, and he finally got the taste of victory. He probably wants to keep going. So having all these veteran star players, I think, will help out. But I don't think they feel the pressure. I think they're more ticked off that it's their night, their championship banner. They're going to hang a banner, not just one, two. One from St. Louis days. Kind of awkward there. Ozzy Osbourne's coming out for the halftime show. It's all about them, superstars in Hollywood. And here comes Josh Allen from upstate New York trying to kill the party. So I think that really kind of motivates them for a Thursday night showdown.
Well, now, and even sort of beyond necessarily the Thursday night game, while I got you here talking about the Rams, Greg and we end up talking a lot about the cap. We were actually just talking about with the Dawson Knox deal that got done here today for Buffalo and talking about sort of some of the philosophies out there in the NFL. And obviously the Rams lead the way in some of the philosophy and just, the not caring about draft picks and trading a lot for these aging vets. And it has reaped the benefits and reaped the fruits that they wanted. But now, are you concerned here? Maybe not necessarily this year, but into the future. But it may impact them here this year that it is top heavy with talent, and a lot of great top heavy talent. But because of the sort of liberal use of some of those picks and assets, that they were down there with Miami Dolphins as having some of the least amount of draft capital here this year to fill in that depth, which that's sort of where the Bills have been, is being able to continue to fill the depth outside of the star talent. That's why we feel real good about them. How does the fan base feel outside of the star talent about where this team is heading into this year?
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the fans, but for me, being a reporter, a first-year Rams reporter, I was covering the Chargers for the previous 4 years and a couple of years with the Raiders before that. So I kept seeing from the outside, and how do they make it work with the cap space and the limited draft picks? And then, by the way, I just saw their right tackle Rob Havenstein is about to get paid, so they keep finding
top
ways
10,
to do it.
Top 10 pay at right tackle,
top
crazy.
10, giving me more work for today and tomorrow. But they're savvy with the contracts. Les Need is great at that. They have some cap space gurus in the building too that I need to kind of get familiar with, because it's not just Les Need and Sean McVay. They have a pretty much big operation. In terms of the draft picks, I'm learning real quickly that these guys have a great scouting department, because you look at a young guy like Ernest Jones, who had a big impact in the Super Bowl. And I was reading the story from Peter King, which is really helpful for me being a new beat reporter, that they were just sending this kid as an extra blitzer, and it really changed the whole outcome of the game. And then you have Bobby Wagner. It's like, okay, you kind of have that balance of young and then the star kind of power. And by the way, Bobby Wagner, I think that's the other thing. You got to hit on these veterans. So you can't have guys over the hill. And I've been watching Bobby Wagner in practice every single day. The guy refuses to take a day off, or a veteran days off, and he's year 11, and he's looking great out there. So it's a mix of blending the star power with the draft guys. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because these guys probably won't play, but they have a couple rookie cornerbacks who look like they were, competitive and eager to learn. And it could help out when you get through the back end of the season and you have injuries piling up. And that's where you get the depth. And even you look at the safety group, these guys are middle round guys, undrafted guys, and they're all starting in the NFL because they get, they scouted, groomed, developed, experience, and you kind of rinse and repeat with that cycle. So yeah, you focus on Stafford, Cooper Kupp. By the way, Cooper Kupp was not a first-round pick, so that's another person right there. So they just find ways with the contracts, the scouting department, and the coaching. It just all blends together. And me coming from the outside looking in, I'm like, okay, so that's how it feels to kind of see how this operation goes. And they don't just do it 1 year; it's year in and year out. And that's why Sean McVay is crediting the Bills a lot, because it wasn't their first rodeo last year. They've been a playoff team. They got to get to over that hump, but they've been a winning organization, and the Rams have been leading the way the last couple of years in how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we dive right into this? Because you mentioned a couple of the things that I wanted to touch on here, talking about the Bills defense versus this Rams offense here. I do think Greg probably gets the better side of the ball in this one, in my opinion, in terms of star power on the other side of the ball in the matchup there. But I do think that I really like this matchup, right? The Rams offense and the Bills defense sort of are, the Rams were like, depending where you're looking, I look at Sharp, they were number 2 in explosive passing plays a year ago with Matt Stafford, totally changing what we had seen from the Rams in previous years with Goff not being able to push the ball downfield and get some of those explosives. But the Bills defense consistently in the Sean McDermott era have been one of the teams that don't allow for explosive plays. So these types of matchups are the ones that get me going, because you're going strength versus strength, 2 teams out there, and I love toxic differential, so I love watching who is going to get and stop these explosive plays. Just from a big picture angle, looking at this Bills defense, what do you think, and how are they going to attack to try to generate some of those explosives, knowing that there's a couple all-pro safeties floating back there?
Yeah, Eric, don't downplay. You got Von Miller, against the former team matchup here. So, and I guess I'll start with with Von Miller there. It could be a problem. He's going to go up against, maybe a Joe Noteboom, who is starting for the first time at left tackle. He started before at left tackle, but now he's the full-time starter for Andrew Whitworth, the guy who was about to get paid, Rob Havenstein. So that could be a matchup. I know the other Bills pass rushers are young, and they brought in Von Miller to help, kind of, speed up that process. So that could be a problem for them. And then the big loss, though, is not having Tre'Davious White to keep up with these wide receivers. And when you talk about explosive plays, that could be a big problem with Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. So, I'll go on the flip side with the Allen Robinson thing. Like, he doesn't look like a number 2 guy out there. I know Cooper Kupp is in a different class on his own with the Devontae Adams and the Tyreek Hill. But he, in any other team besides those 3 teams I just mentioned or players, he could be a wide receiver one. He looks dominant out there. He has chemistry, Matthew Stafford, to create, those explosives down the field, because not just, because, I guess the big body kind of thing. And
it's not just separation.
Exactly. And I don't want to limit the guy to be a big catch radius guy. I think that's where I got stumbled. Is like, he runs the full route tree. He does it all. He's a willing blocker, kind of like what Cooper Kupp does. So that could be an issue for these young cornerbacks for the Bills. And but they have help there with the safeties. I think all the safeties are going to be there. I think was it Jordan Poyer who was on the injury report?
Yeah, he was.
Okay, so he's fine. So that helps out with these young guys to kind of be the back end or maneuver wherever on the field. So it's going to be a nice little chess match. But I think the Von Miller piece there could be an issue, because the one thing I keep reading, talking about all these numbers, is if you kind of create organic 4-man rush on Matthew Stafford, that's when he tends to, fall off.
You're not going to blitz him. Yeah,
exactly. He's going to pick you apart because he's cerebral. He's smart. He knows what he's looking at. When you can kind of just do it organically, it's like, oh, okay, here's a pressure I did not expect. So if they get that with Von Miller or some of these young guys, it could be a long day for Matthew Stafford.
I do have with the DVOA, we had Aaron Schatz on a couple weeks back here doing the almanac for them, and he had a great bit when in the reading for the Rams and the preview for the Rams. They were only blitzed 20% of the time, less than any other quarterback except for Patrick Mahomes. Matthew Stafford beats the blitz, a league best DVOA, with 7.6 yards per play, 19 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. So it doesn't play into the Bills' strengths. They're not going to be a high percentage blitz team anyway. They're going to drop back and try to hit you with some different zone looks and some pre-snap stuff and try to make some confusion, but limit it and keep it all in front of them. You mentioned the Von Miller thing, and I agree with you. I think that's the big story on the defensive side of the ball. But I want to ask you, since you touched over the offensive line, while I've got you here, that interior on the offensive line, because I think Von Miller, one of the biggest things I'm most excited about him coming here is I think the emergence of Ed Oliver. I think Ed Oliver is due for a breakout year because of the type of gravity of Von Miller pulls. And I'm looking at this interior of the offensive line here for the Rams, and I do see some opportunities for a new stacked Buffalo Bills interior defensive line to kind of eat. Can you tell me about this group? I know, Brian Allen's a weird one because he grades well in PFF, but a lot of the other metrics don't support that he's playing as well necessarily as he's graded. So I'm looking for some kind of advice of what this interior offensive line looks like.
Yeah, I'll start with Brian Allen, the center there. He's had some injuries, a little older, not that old though, but they really managed his workload in the summer. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's doing physically and cardio-wise, because he was one of the guys that rarely played because they wanted to just keep him safe. And then the right guard, Coleman Shelton, he was playing a lot of center because he was filling in for Brian Allen on the days off he had. And then they kind of lose some depth because of rookie Logan Bruss, third-round pick. That's their first pick of the year because they don't have first rounders or second rounders every year. He tore his ACL, MCL, so they're limited on the back end. Yeah, maybe it won't matter much because the entire starting offensive line is there. But Coleman Shelton is also new to his offensive line as a starter. He's been out there before. I think Rob Havenstein was telling me that he's not worried because he calls him a grinder. He's been around. So, but it's a new look offensive line. With Joe Noteboom and Coleman Shelton. And yeah, these guys have been around, so it could really ease the chemistry. But still, you got to get on the field together and play. They did not play in the preseason. I know they had some game or scrimmages, as we know about the brawl with the Bengals there. So they had some that out the way. But it's going to be interesting to see because, the way you kind of evaluate offensive linemen in training camp is when you don't write about them. You don't hear about them. You don't pay attention. And I didn't really pay attention to them because they didn't stood out to me. I kept looking for the combination.
That's good going against Aaron Donald every day.
Exactly. That's when but it's Aaron Donald, so you can't put it in the back burner. But you're right there, of course, Aaron. But it's going to be interesting because this is something that we should all look at is this new look offensive line. How would you operate? How's the rhythm? And how are you going to deal with Ed Oliver, who, by the way, I used to work at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He was like in the Las Vegas Bowl. Houston was, and he was like a freshman. They were trying to say he's a third overall pick. Obviously, it didn't go that way for him, but he's still a very talented player. So it's cool to see his development from his college days to Buffalo.
For sure.
So flipping over to the other side of the ball, I think that it's oftentimes easy to dismiss the other 9 guys. And I think the situation of being able to be there, obviously, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey rightfully get all the attention. Not an accident of how they've built this, but I think maybe some more casual fans literally think it's just 9 other nobodies, and that's just not the case. So starting in the back, I was interested to see, bringing Troy Hill back. He kind of had his little sabbatical in Cleveland and then came back after heading over there. David Long is a guy that both Aaron and I liked in the draft coming out when he came out in 19 and was someone who's gone well. And then Taylor Rapp is a guy that I've always loved at the safety position. I think that there's more continuity and talent in that secondary to let them move Jalen Ramsey around in that star position. What are your thoughts on what they let him do, and who do you see Ramsey focusing most on out of those Bills receivers this week?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty big storyline that's not being talked about, because Jalen Ramsey came back from his shoulder surgery, which is really late in June, and we kind of just forgot about it when he became a full participant in practice. But he's never had a live hit. He hasn't had a tackle. So until you get a tackle and you really test out that shoulder, like even in the joint scrimmage, I'm sure it was very like cautious. Okay, don't do anything crazy. Just kind of play with the other shoulder or whatever. And even I think both of them are banged up too. So when he's out there with live bullets, how's he going to do with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie? So that's going to be a big factor. But so I don't know how much I expect him to roam around in the star role. But not to kind of get too far away into the future, because eventually that's what they want to do. That's why they brought in a Troy Hill from the Cleveland days, because he kind of started this hybrid role star thing from Brandon Staley's scheme, and they tinker with it and they liked it, and like, okay, Jalen, do you want to try it? And he excelled at it. He was playing the slot often. They also cross-trained David Long, the guy you mentioned. And so Troy Hill comes back and it's like, hey, you young guy, David Long, you could do this now too. Cool. We have an extra guy to do it. So there's 3 guys who are versatile in the starting cornerback group to keep up with this great receiving core for the Bills. And I'm a big fan of Gabe Davis. And I'm glad that we've confirmed that it's not Gabriel, it's Gabe. I got that right. And it's going to be very kind of busy for these guys. So it's good to be versatile to keep up. But I am intrigued. How do you use Jalen Ramsey with the limited shoulder? Maybe he's fine. We don't know. But say, Troy Hill and David Long are struggling with Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. Do you move around this piece here that you love so much? All questions that we're going to be answering on Thursday night.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And you already touched on one, our man Cliff here with the comment that Bobby Wagner still has the juice. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask that you had touched on, that it certainly doesn't seem like he's lost a step in what you've seen in practice. Is that right?
Yeah. He like I mentioned, he wouldn't come off the field. And I think that's part of his, perfect attitude of wanting to master this Rams defensive scheme. And it's pretty different from what Pete Carroll was running with the Seahawks. I think it was a cover 3, these olden times. It feels so old now. With the high safety, or I think the high safety now is with Raheem Morris and with the Brandon Staley started. So, or Big Fangio to kind of take it way back. I'm losing track of these defensive schemes, but it always evolves. And I think for Bobby Wagner, it was something that he wanted to make sure he perfected it. I'm sure I should probably ask. I'm sure the coaches were saying, "Hey, take a day off," and he kept refusing to do it. And I'll say this about Bobby Wagner was, he's not just coming to play out his final years. He's doing everything he did as an All-Pro in terms of calling the defense with the green dot, being a run stopper, rushing the passer, playing in coverage, doing it all. And he was talking about, he doesn't believe that the Bills are going to limit Josh Allen's designed run plays. He's going to be ready for that. And say they start doing that with the misdirections, he's going to be ready, because that's why they brought him in, to sniff that out or be the second line of defense when things start kind of breaking off into off-scripted plays. Bobby Wagner is a guy who excelled in that. So, he's 32, year 11. But from training camp, I know it's just training camp, he looks to be the same All-Pro middle linebacker that he was with the Seahawks.
Well, I don't think it's terribly dissimilar to people who had questions about Von Miller in those last little stretches when Denver wasn't playing that well, and it was kind of hard to, there wasn't a lot of leads for him to go hunting late in the fourth quarter because they were losing a lot of those games, and that can change your pass rush opportunities. And people question like what he had left in the tank, and then he switches over, gets into an ideal situation in Los Angeles, and you see that, he still had plenty left in the tank. I'm curious to see, is that going to be more of what we see from Bobby Wagner here? Because, obviously there were some questions of if he still had it in coverage and if he could still move the way that he did before. Now with the talent around him in this Rams defense, it'll be interesting. One more question on the front seven. I know obviously Aaron Donald is just that indomitable force. He's just, so much gravity, and I'm very interested to see what the plan is on how you provide significant amounts of help to where he is. Do you think opposite him, is it still mainly Leonard Floyd that we're expecting to be that primary, other option? I know Justin Hollins has gotten some attention. There's some other guys floating around there. Do you think it's mainly going to be Floyd that's coming off the edge there?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked about that because, that you can't just lose a Von Miller and be like, okay, let's roll it out again and see how it goes. And that was something I was really focusing on as a new beat reporter covering the Rams. And a lot of people told me who've been there, actually they weren't that bad before they got Von Miller. These guys like Justin Hollins and Terrell Lewis and a few guys that already got let go, which I don't know if it says a lot, were being productive enough for Leonard Floyd, and they were making it work, but they were missing that extra level, and that's the level that Von Miller had. And it may be, no, maybe I shouldn't say maybe, it really changed. It was a game changer when Von Miller arrived in the midseason, and he took this defense to another level with Aaron Donald, and they were just creating a constant pressure and push in the middle. So how do you replace that? And seeing the same cast of Justin Hollins, who has struggled with the sacks, but he's very, polished. He could play middle linebacker. He could create some pressure, but he can't really get to the sacks or create takeaways. That hasn't been his thing. Why would he do it now? But obviously, when I talk to him, he's taking up the challenge. Terrell Lewis has the skill set to be a very pressure-heavy outside linebacker, but he can't stay healthy. Will he do that this year? I don't know. And after that, it's a big drop-off. It's 2 rookies, and you're very limited besides, Leonard Floyd. So where I go back to is Ernest Jones. Like I mentioned, he was a blitzer who saved the day in the Super Bowl. Bobby Wagner also rushing the passer a lot. And I know they're going to play a lot of dime too, so he's going to be one linebacker pretty often, Bobby Wagner. But I think Ernest Jones is going to see the field often because he's a good rusher from either, from the edge or from the middle of the field. He finds a way to create pressure against a running back or whoever, or a lineman. So I think Bobby Wagner and Ernest Jones will fill that kind of void and make it a group effort between the outside guys and the inside guys.
All right, Gilbert. You're the first one of the year stepping into the gauntlet here with us. We're going to put you on the spot. We're less than 24 hours away from kickoff of the NFL season. Highly anticipated match. You versus us. What are we going? What are we looking like? Give us a little bit of a rundown on kind of how you see this game going, and then we want a final score prediction from you.
Yeah, I think it started off pretty sluggish for the Rams because of the whole ceremony of the concerts, the Super Bowl banner, all that, and trying to figure out this offensive line and also a running back rotation that barely even played together because they were trying to be cautious with them. Mm-hmm. What if Josh Allen gets off to a hot start and you try to keep pace and the track meet? Don't do that. You're going to fall into the trap. So I think it'll be kind of a slow start, and maybe the Bills get up, in a lead. But I think they'll rely heavily on this run game with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson and Kyron Williams to set up Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson and Tyler Higbee. So I think it'll be kind of a sluggish start. Bills get up, halftime lead. But I go back to the whole Tre'Davious White thing, not having that corner there with these stud wide receivers and Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. I think it'll be a shootout. I know the Bills have a great offense of Josh Allen, and you guys didn't even give me a chance to brag about Josh Allen, but it's okay. We know how great he is. But Matthew Stafford is also good, and he has his good receivers, good weapons. But I would go 37-33, Rams to win, just because of Tre'Davious White kind of thing, and also it's the first game of the year, and they're at home. But I know it's a Bills show. I think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, and it might even be a rematch of Week 1.
Hey, I don't mind good teams being picked on our show. Yeah. If somebody came on and was trying to pick the Lions, that's actually a personal.
we might kick them.
Come on,
that's a personal shot at one of the shows, Air 8 Hour Steve picking the Lions here this year. If somebody did that, then I have a problem. But I respect it.
No, I appreciate that, but it's going to be a great game. That's why I'm excited to see the games being played. And I just go with the home team on a Thursday. And I know they've been rested for the whole thing. But
and Sean McVay's what, 5-0?
Yeah, that's
never lost an opener.
Yeah,
never lost. So he knows how to scheme a game plan when he has 5 months to do it. So it should be a fun game.
I'm hoping we just jinxed it.
Yeah.
Maybe we just jinxed it.
It could be 5-1. So we'll look back here at this.
You never know. So I appreciate your time, Gilbert. And make sure you guys are checking it out. House of Horns, his work at the OC Register, everything that's out there. Find him at GManzano24. Really appreciate your time tonight. This is great.
Wish you a happy, healthy season, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg and Aaron. Appreciate the time and happy football season. Take care.
Thanks, man.
All right. Always fun. This is our first big.
Feels good to get that, just knocking off a little rust with you.
So one other thing that happened today, I dove on and did a quick video breakdown for our premium members. And it's something that, we've been really proud of that we've gotten going here. And if you guys, we get asked all the time, like, what can you do to help? What can you do to support us? And honestly, this is it. Subscribe to our One Pass access, be able to dive in there. We've got awesome, season shirts, decals. You get premium access. I did an entire Salary Cap 101 series, did a immediate live reaction video for all of our premium members to the Dawson Knox extension we're going to get into. Eric's, glossary section that he's gone through, our Slack channel, which is awesome, all kinds of fantastic premium member articles that are out there on the website, a lot of time and energy that we've invested into things. And this is really the best way to be able to show your support for Cover One is to sign up for the One Pass, and you'll see that description in the show link here as well.
Yeah, it's only $57 a year. Obviously, we did that for the big game, 57 this year. The Bills are going to be heading there, and you can sign up today at cover1.net/1pass. Or like Greg said, it'll be in the description. You can go there. But like Greg said here, this is what keeps the show going. So if you ever, we get a lot of questions about that. If you ever, what can we do to help out? It's besides likes and subscribes while you're over here on YouTube, it's stuff like joining our premium membership. And that was a great video today, Greg, because not that I cared about the cap. I did tweet out that I'm at the point, man, where like Brandon Beane does something and I'm not super worried about how the future implications go because I know he understands that future too. And then I know that he's worked in some things to allow some pliability to himself and some flexibility with this cap going forward. But getting your breakdown of it made me kind of understand that it's not that, what you see and what you hear reported isn't always exactly right, and people go off on takes of, well, now we can't do this, that, and the other thing, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, it's something where I went into detail, and obviously the point of the video was Dawson Knox signed a 4-year, $53.6 million extension, $13.4 million makes him the 6th highest paid tight end in the league. There's a couple other ones coming up here. By the time that actually starts next year, and TJ Hawkinson will have his deal. Mike Gesicki,
some random tight end will get
Dalton Schultz,
paid.
some other David Njoku that we don't expect to get up there. He'll likely be the 9th or 10th highest paid tight end by the time the deal actually starts, which honestly is perfectly fine. And then when Kyle
Bills are going to have a bunch of 10th best paid guys in the next year, whether it's in Lombardi.
It's going to be fantastic. So Stephon Diggs keeps falling down the ranks further. Josh Allen, now Dawson Knox is the next one. Finding ways to pay him. It was the right thing to do. By the time Waller and Pitts and those guys get their money, he might be 11th or 12th on that list. But it was, to your point, it's simply showing that what previously was a reality that we accepted was somewhat of a choice by previous ownership. Ralph Wilson didn't want to lay out a ton of, when they do this, I think fans don't realize it takes a lot of cash and the Pagulas are paying a lot of money up front with big bonuses that can get prorated out, and you have to front that money and a lot of guaranteed salaries that allow them to be flexible and creative with it. Josh Allen only has like a $16 million cap figure this year. He's actually the 2nd highest paid player in the NFL in cash. I think he's getting like $59 million in cash this year in the actual.
That's such a great investment still for the Pagulas.
Oh,
that's so stupid. He's the goose that laid the golden egg.
Oh, it's amazing. But it shows you that the fact that he can be the 2nd highest paid cash player in the NFL, but has such a deflated cap hit. Von Miller is the same thing. Von Miller got a boatload of cash. He counts $5 million against the cap. Stephon Diggs got a boatload of cash. He counts $11 million against the cap. That's only possible because the Pagulas cut checks. And that's all I care about in ownership. Like, it's great if you have some super savvy genius owner who's making big moves. But what I really care about is hire good people, cut
give them
checks,
the tools,
get out of the way.
Give them the tools. And that's what Brandon Beane's always said.
Do.
Brandon Beane has always come forward and said at the end of every year, thanking the Pagulas for always giving them every single tool. And one of the tools he's talking about, probably the biggest tool, is cash and access to that cash, right? Like he's talking about private jets and getting scouts to places they're going to be, but ultimately it's that flexibility that you talk about. The cap it's not a myth, but it's not hard. It's not rigid.
It is certainly very flexible.
This though brought me back. Somebody I think had retweeted the conversation we had about the tight end position, and I had talked about my concern for Dawson Knox and getting this deal done before the season started, and if obviously as close as you can get to the season starting, getting this deal done, was he is one of these guys like Ed Oliver right now that I'm having a hard time not just seeing a total explosion out of these players. And I was worried that you wait on this deal to exactly what you were just saying, Greg. You wait on this deal and then you get a Waller done and you get all these other guys done, and it just pushes him out of a comfort level for you with the team. So able to get it done. And then I think he will still continue to explode. And now he's an ascending player. Bean talks about this all the time. Like, you've got to build around your own that you've drafted and that are ascending players. And so every time we see these guys, we just got to assume that Brandon Bean's working to get them back.
Yeah. And, obviously I got a ton of questions today, and there's a couple here in the chat as well. Jordan Poyer is a good example that Brandon Bean is going to set a value of what he thinks a player should be extended for. And that so far we've been very fortunate that Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano, Josh Allen, Dawson Knox, Stephon Diggs have agreed to that when they probably could have leveraged a little bit more. It's not always going to work out. And that, I certainly am now less than 50-50 that we're going to see an extension for Jordan Poyer, and that it's just the reality of where it is. I think he's going to play great this season, and we'll see it next spring. Maybe they talk about a franchise tag. Maybe they find a way to do it at the deadline next spring. But for this season, I now do not expect an extension before the year starts here. And that's simply the reality here. And it'll turn into that debate versus, I think we got another question here from Mattis, that it'll turn into that versus Edmonds. I don't think Oliver even comes into play. No. He's under contract this year and next year. He's an easy monster extension, but monster extension next year. I do think it's a debate where I don't think they can do both Poyer and Edmonds, and they're going to have to choose. And although I think Poyer is better at his job than Edmonds is today, the youth may win out, and the fact that they think who's going to play better over the next coming seasons, it's very reasonable they could pick Edmonds, even if it's painful to see a guy who's, Jordan Poyer is a stud, the heart and soul of that team and that locker room. It'll be painful if he leaves, but I don't think anybody has to worry about that because he's going to play his butt off this whole season.
Yeah, I think right after about a week or so after we saw Drew Rosenhaus at camp, I dropped to basically 0% chance that I thought Jordan Poyer was going to get the deal done this year, right? To your point, who knows what happens? You win a ring, you get a little Super Bowl drunk, you want to bring the band back together for one more. Maybe they figure something out then. But right at this point, once I saw kind of a week's time pass, because what that told me was Drew showed up, made his pitch. Brandon Bean said, here's the value, kind of to your point of we're putting values on guys. Here's our value for what our plan is going forward with all these young guys we're bringing in. Here's where we're at for you. And that didn't match up for the two. And it's like, hey, well, we know Jordan's going to come in and play his butt off. Let's go win a ring and then maybe figure this out next year. So I've thought for a while that ship sort of sailed. And unfortunately for fans, if it does come down to the Poyer or Edmonds, I think the Bills are much more in on Tremaine Edmonds than the fan base is. And maybe even the media is. He continues to be a captain. This is third year in a row now where he's the captain of the defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I don't think Leslie Frazier is going anywhere. I think he's going to fall short of getting a head coaching job again. So you're going to have continued continuity on the defense. And if you're going to make a long-term money investment, you're going to invest still in that youth, like you said. And he is still a good player. He's not the Jordan Poyer level at his position. He's not an all-pro linebacker, but he's a huge part of what you're trying to build for the future. And there are ways to replace Jordan Poyer. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to replace it with an all-pro safety, but you can still replace it with good play and still be a highly competitive team and a highly competitive defense. Like the Rams, people are talking about the Rams as a highly competitive football team this year that could be competing for a championship. They lost Andrew Whitworth. And they're like, you know what I mean? Like that's a similar probably hole.
And also Corbett.
In Corbett. Like these are holes that got left in your team. This is going to happen to the Bills. It stinks. I love Jordan Poyer. But you said it pretty well on Twitter. Like I'm never going to shame somebody for going to get their money. No. You know what I mean? Like hopefully we win a ring together and we, have a nice long hug at the end. Emotions are had and everybody's happy. You go get your money and the Bills continue to win Super Bowls.
Yeah. And there's still a path for that to be resolved before that gets to that point. So we'll see where those things go. But these are the realities that the Bills are going to have to figure out over the coming years. They've been very fortunate that right now the best players who have left are Harrison Phillips, Levi Wallace. At some point, you will have higher caliber players that will leave. It's just inevitable. Brandon Beane's found a magical way to avoid that thus far, but at some point, you're going to have some of those challenges.
As long as the net positive of players brought in continues to be, I mean, if we're going to sit here and rave about the draft class of the last couple of years and how much of a wizard Beane is, we can't also panic when a star player does eventually go. We have to trust in that process of filling in behind that we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah. So we'll get into more of that as the next off season, but right now it's time to focus on football. And I thought before we get into our final predictions of things like that, you had a really good idea for a segment.
Every once in a while, right?
Yeah, no, I like this a lot. What are some of the final storylines heading into the season that we think have been overstated, whether by us, by the media, by fans, and then we'll get into understated as well. But I'll let you kick things off here. What's something that you think has been maybe a little overdone out of what's been talked about here?
I got a couple, but I will start with James Cook role in this offense and how soon I think that he will be inserted into this offense. I think it's fun to get drunk on a new toy. And then you sort of see that play out in the preseason where they're kind of working on some things, right? And fans see that, and maybe we get a little drunk on this idea of what we're actually going to see. I think once the season rolls in, at least early on in the season, they're going to pull some of that back and go back to what they're comfortable with, which is going to be running the ball with Devin Singletary and, spreading guys out, and they will manufacture some touches. I think Cook's going to be active and get manufactured touches and line up out and try to dictate some stuff to defenses. But I don't think he's going to be, I have people texting me that aren't Bills fans. They're asking like, is it worth drafting him late in fantasy? And I was like, I mean, if you're trying to stash a rookie breakout, but I don't see him being a huge part of this offense until later when he earns it.
Yeah.
So that's
if Singletary got hurt or something like that.
Yeah.
But if Singletary is healthy, he is the primary back.
It looks that way to me. And so I just think we probably spent a little too much time this summer talking about like how he's going to be the thing that kind of takes this offense over to another level.
One I'm going to mention is the comments I've heard, and this has been consistent in a lot of different places.
You subtweet me right now in real time. No.
In that I've heard it a lot of places. It's been on a lot of the preview shows for really sharp people that I respect. Talking about like the biggest weakness and concern is the offensive line. And I think there's an underestimation of Aaron Cromer and his impact on the team, but I've just heard it talked about a lot. I heard it again today. Robert Mays had Aaron Schatz on doing their AFC East preview. Mina Kimes brought it up. I've heard it multiple different places. And I think, you said it really well during our preview in the offseason that this can both be an average offensive line and the best offensive line Josh Allen's ever had. Right. And that the benefit Josh Allen brings of his elusiveness and ability to evade pressure really helps that. And when you add that in with what Aaron Cromer is developing with these guys, I think it's going to be more favorable than what people are concerned about in the degree to which I've heard it listed as a weakness or a concern. When I kind of thought it got upgraded and was improved was a little bit surprising for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think one thing that maybe I would say maybe isn't talked about enough is there's one concern I have maybe in that group, and it's Spencer Brown. And not seeing him. I was concerned with him even if maybe we got a full preseason of him, but I'm concerned with him not having had a preseason of him. And so, but outside of that, I actually agree with what you're saying. They're a more athletic group. I think they're a better coached group. I think they have a better understanding of what they want to accomplish in the run game, which I think is going to also take pressure off pass blocking. I think they're going to be able to establish a little bit of physicality in the run game and a little bit better production out of it. Not necessarily more running, but more production, thing we've been elusively here chasing the last couple of years. And I think that's going to take a little bit of pressure off teams being able to really hone in on attacking Josh. So I agree. I don't think it's a great offensive line, but I'm not sure. I guess it's a weakness in terms of position groups
Sure,
when
if
you're
you
looking
had
at
to
the
pick
offense, right?
least best, that
Out of a really good
obviously,
offense.
when everything else is really, really strong, I guess that is the least
Sure.
good part of the offense. But
Yeah.
the degree to which it was referenced as kind of a concern threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
What's
I got
another
another
overstated?
that we talked about too much. And this is going to make me sound like such a freaking hater. And I apologize because I want to take my L on Isaiah McKenzie. I've been trying to take my L on him.
Yeah.
He won the starting job outright. I think it's his job. I think it's not necessarily a Isaiah McKenzie's like the Cole Beasley and he's in the slot primarily. I think, and this maybe goes to something of things we haven't talked about enough, which is Jamison Crowder's role still on this team. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the game day actives. That could be playing big into this. I could eat my words within 24 hours if Crowder's a game day inactive here to start the year. But if he's active, something Taron Johnson said a couple weeks ago about how they were asking him about guarding Isaiah McKenzie in practice and what's that with that speed. And he sort of pulled that back and said, like, yeah, no, that's hard. But what is really hard is the transition of how they're using Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie and defending those two different types of players, within the reps. And that stood out to me as like, maybe there's something there. Maybe it's not. Maybe they were just splitting up reps at practice. But to me, that set off a bell to that. Maybe we need to pump the brakes on a big breakout for Isaiah McKenzie in the slot role. And I think a lot of people just envision Madden and putting a speed guy in the slot and he's open every time, right?
It's not always that simple. Yeah.
It's tough.
Cliff here, I will say so many people picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl is terrifying. Super uncomfortable. Super uncomfortable.
It actually, it makes it ruins a little bit of this fun of how good the team is going into it. Cause every time I think about it, all I think of is like, that's still only like a 10% chance.
Yeah.
Like they still have a 90% chance to not do this.
Win. Oh. So my other one that I had jotted down here, Steve was actually on the same, part was the questions about Ken Dorsey. I think it's just gone a little too far, similar to the offensive line where it is reasonable to wonder, is there going to be a learning curve? Is there going to be some challenges and bumps in the road for Ken Dorsey? But I think the degree to which it's been spoken about, especially some of the articles I've read and some of the pieces that are out there,
like he's incapable.
Yeah. Or that
he's going to vomit all over himself.
Or that the best case scenario is that he's, almost as good as Brian Daboll. Like it's possible that he's better. Like I don't know. And I'm not expecting that from day one, but Brian Daboll wasn't perfect either. The crazy arguments I had with Drew Gear, our friend, about Brian Daboll. We don't know what the capacity and the creativity and the counterpunch that Ken Dorsey is going to bring. So I'm open to the range of outcomes that there is something where he could be a learning curve and challenge, and that the talent of the offense kind of makes it that the floor is pretty high, but that he's not an upgrade and is just kind of keeping things moving. But I think people are talking about it as though there's no possibility where he could be better at this than Brian Daboll. That's a possibility here. And I've never hear that referenced, that like, hey, he might have some different creativity we haven't seen previously.
For sure. And he could be better and still not have like the box score.
Yeah,
stats.
it doesn't necessarily have to mean we shatter team records.
Absolutely. And so that's going to be probably a conversation that lingers on for a while. But I agree with you. I think it's gone too far. And I think it ties in with another one that I think is getting not so much all summer, but is sort of in line with that and it's getting talked too much. It ties in with where people talk about Dorsey and sort of how they talk about this Bills team and offense. And it's that like Josh Allen somehow is the quote Sean McDermott had about like, the mashing the buttons on it was one of the Barstool podcasts there. And he talked about, mashing the buttons, but he was just like having fun with the guys on the podcast. Yeah. Like that isn't the Bills offense. And that has been taken as like, Josh Allen's just scrambling back there and making big plays, backyard football style, and anybody can coach this offense. And, Josh Allen,
maybe go ahead. 20% for him instead of 5%.
Yeah,
but
he makes
like
those
80% of the time it's in rhythm on time.
And people have taken it a step further and like, Josh Allen is a below average or like barely average processor, and that he's not that smart, and it's just all this strength and athleticism and arm that gets him over the top and still makes up for the inaccuracies and all that stuff. You're sort of seeing a diminishing of Josh Allen's actually ability to do this stuff. And multiple in post-game shows, Greg, how many times did we talk about multiple long sustained 80-yard drives that the offense went through? Like you don't get both those things. Like you can't have long sustained drives all season long and only be backyard style football. So I think that's getting diminishing of Josh Allen in his actual progress and in the mental part of the game, I think, is being overstated.
I'll flip over into my first understated if
Let's
you're
do
ready.
it.
So it goes to the extension that we heard tonight, and one that I know, we both touched on in the offseason here. I think Dawson Knox's role in this offense has been understated, and I could see him taking a pretty significant leap forward. And I know one of the stats that I saw floating around today, and I wish I could credit who pulled it up, because I had talked about where Dawson Knox ranked, and he was 18th in catches and 15th in yards,
Right.
and that one that really played out, he was 21st in tight end targets.
Correct.
And that going from 70 up to 90 or 100 is a huge jump and very reasonable in the amount that we could, going up by 20 or 30 more when 184 are vacated from Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. I think you could have 20 or 30 more for him, 40 or 50 more for Gabe Davis, and still another 100 for the slot together.
Sure.
And still have that make sense. I think that's very, very feasible. And I do think that Knox's role might be closer to the number 3 target here than what it was before, where he was kind of this bonus, weapon, but that it was pretty definitively, Joe Marino used to talk about, he was wide receiver centric in the way that it was driven. I think that Knox has been an understated story.
I love you. I'm glad that we're together. It's like destiny, because that was the first thing that I have under my list of things that we don't talk enough about is Dawson Knox. And you've listened to me sit here for years and defend him even before it was cool. I was on the Dawson Knox train, and he's only exceeded even my expectations here going forward. And I swear to God, there's 2 guys. It's Dawson Knox and Ed Oliver. I'll get right into as my second on this list that just don't get talked about enough. And I think that they're ascending to be top 10 players at their position in the league, and probably in the top half of that, in the top 5 of those position groups in the league. And so this day and getting him extended, I think, was big deal. The relationship he has with Josh Allen matters. You see them being great friends. I think that is going to matter long term. He continues to build trust with him, and I agree. I kind of joked with Kyle Naps, who had the podcast Naps Knows Bills for the Fanatics, and he had a post about he retweeted something. I think it was a PFF, name a better trio, and it was Diggs, Gabe Davis, and Allen. I said, "Oh, Diggs, Dawson Knox, and Allen," and he was like, "Oh, well, same, right?" Like, and I really do believe that some games, I don't think Dawson Knox will be the second pass catching target, but I think he will be the third. And I think some games he will be the second. I think he'll have some big games where he goes off for multiple touchdowns, where he's just a matchup nightmare for those either safeties or linebackers, and the Bills feed that. So I'm excited about what he brings. The confidence is there. He's sort of put it all together over the last year and a half. And I think it's all going to come to fruition. Now that the money's out of the way, he can just go out there and play.
Yeah. I think that's really, really well done. And I think my other understated is what I expect to see from Tremaine Edmonds this year. I think that there's so many fans who have just already made up their mind on Tremaine Edmonds, and that do I think it's ideal that he needs all the pieces around him to be, closer to perfect for him to really play at a high level? No, but there's very few Brian Urlachers and Luke Kuechlys that can transcend everything around them and lift up everyone else. And that most guys need the roles to be played well. But I think this defensive line in front of Tremaine Edmonds is going to let him play at a really high level. And I think it's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not out on him, and I think that he's going to be a priority to bring back. I do think they're off a little bit, both the Bills and Bean and Tremaine's representatives. I think they probably tried to get something done, and they're just not there yet. We'll see how the season plays out, but I like that one a lot. I've got are you done with your that we
That's
don't talk about enough? I got a couple more here, and I can run through them real quick. Sort of in line with Dawson Knox and Oliver, not as big of a deal, but Devin Singletary, I don't think is getting talked about enough this offseason. He's a good, productive running back one. And maybe I went a little too hard in the paint on my saying he's the top 10 running back in the NFL, but I think that he can like hover in that production, 11th, 12th best guy, especially if we think that Aaron Kromer is going to do what he can do in the interior offensive line plays better than it was over the last year. I think Devin Singletary would be a nice, steady running back to keep this offense on schedule all season long. And I think he'll be good enough to frustrate fans, and that James Cook isn't as big of a part of the offense as they would like him to be. I had the offensive line. You talked about that. James Conner. The last one I have to talk about actually is, it doesn't get talked about enough. We were on with Gilbert and he was talking about the Vic Fangio scheme and the Staley scheme and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of disrespectful league wide that we don't talk enough about the Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier scheme and what it's done over the last few years, what it continues to do. And every year on Twitter and in the Bills atmosphere, people want to change it substantially. And by people, I mean you, Greg. I'm attacking you, President. No, but like everybody, there'll be this bad game that sticks in our memory. Unfortunately, it's been Kansas City year over year, and trying to change that scheme. And I think it's maybe talked about too much, and what's not talked about enough is how good the scheme is and how much they really trust in that. And it's that when Gilbert was talking about the Bills being without Tre'Davious White, it's my faith in the scheme and the players that are still there within the scheme that makes me say, like, yeah, there's going to be receptions given up. We're going to have some frustrating plays tomorrow night. But I don't know that they're going to be able to get the big explosive plays with these safeties and Taron Johnson and these linebackers in the middle and a better pass rush. Like if everyone's doing their 111, I think you can really limit this and make them methodically drive down the field on you, which is what the Bills want to do to teams. And so they don't get enough credit for being top defensive coaches in the NFL, and that bothers me.
Yeah, I'll push back a tiny bit, only in the sense of I don't think Frazier and McDermott get enough credit for how much they've evolved their scheme.
Sure.
So I think that some of the things that, I'm often asking for tweaks and little sprinkles of other things here and wanting it. I think they've done more of that than what people realize.
I mean, becoming a full nickel base.
Yeah, we weren't a base nickel when it started, and that's now a transition. And that we're always going to be, in general, pressure with 4, cover 2. Like that's going to be the gist of it, more zone than average. But I think they've found different ways to more creatively disguise coverages, bring more exotic pressures, even if it's 4. It doesn't have to be the same like 4 you expect.
They want to do more things and be more multiple. Why they got more Elam, press, but that doesn't mean it happens right away, right?
Yeah,
like that's
correct.
Where I'm at. Like that stuff takes time, and they're going to build that in slowly.
But yes, I do realize that some of the things I want aren't realistic.
Me too.
So as we get ready to close out the show tonight, we have come to our very first game predictions, and that now being here, it's something exciting, and that, this is another new season. We're excited for our sponsorship with Uncle Jumbo's. They've been good to us and coming back for another year. It's been exciting to be able to get things rolling. We've had partnerships with our guys over at Underdog Fantasy. If you want to still jump in and get ready for the season, especially in New York, you can do the over-under picks. If you use promo code COVER1 for Underdog Fantasy, you can get they'll match your first deposit up to $100, which is really nice. So some of those fun
I might do a draft there tonight. I don't even know.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So it's a lot of fun, be able to go over and have yourself a good time. But now I'll let you choose. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first with your game prediction?
You go first. Start this year.
I'm gonna be hard pressed to pick another team all season. Like I've already thought about it, in that, this team is talented. They are deep. They are capable. When you look at this line, it's a 2.5 point spread, over under 51.5, depending on where you're looking at it. That means that on a neutral field, they're calling this like a 5-point Bills game. And that means if it was in Buffalo, they're calling Buffalo by like 7.5. It's just crazy to see the Bills in that kind of position against the defending Super Bowl champions. But I think it's for a reason, and I think it's real, and I think this team is special. I think that it is uneasy and anxiety inducing that we see so many pundits and experts picking the Buffalo Bills. But it's for a reason, and there's a reason they've done it. And I do think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be back and forth, but I think that the Bills kind of like what Gilbert said, I think they jump out early and then hold on and have the lead pretty much from start to finish, but that the Rams keep up and make it kind of tense at the end. I've got Buffalo 31, Los Angeles 27, the Bills winning by 4. I have the over and the Bills covering the spread. And I think it's the start of a very special season.
I might be drunk on hubris and burn it all hype videos.
God, they're so nice.
They are nice. And I'm buying into this team in a big way this year. I agree. I'm going to be tough pressed to come out right and pick them for losses. So I might look like a homer a lot of times on this show. At the same time, I'm also bracing myself for like a 3-3 start somewhere. And if there's a game to drop, this is the one to drop, although it's not ideal, right? The national display in front of everybody, the anticipation of waiting. You're going to have to deal with the Nick Wrights and everybody coming out and calling your team terrible.
Paper Tigers couldn't handle the pressure.
All that. I think there's a scenario though where they're hovering around 500. But for game predictions, going into this game, looking at this team, I'm honestly not all that sold on the Rams. I think the Rams are getting way overstated of who they are. I don't believe that they belonged in the Super Bowl last year. I really don't.
I don't think they're the best team in the NFC.
I don't think they're the best team in the NFC. I think that it was a really weird playoffs last year. They were very good in one-score games. If you get up on them, they're not a very good football team last year. And so they sort of had the opposite of the Bills, right? The Bills' luck was they didn't get those one-score games.
They boat raced 11 teams and then just had horrible luck in one-score games.
Yes, and so I think some of their luck was odd. I don't think that it's something that they can recapture year over year. I think their losses were greater than their gains in the offseason. And I don't agree with Gilbert. I think that they aren't able right now. I think they're at a deficit of talent coming in versus what they're actually adding. And I don't know if that takes root this year, but I think that they're beginning to crumble. And I think the Bills are just too much of a force. I think they come in and just meet the moment in this game right away, right from the jump. And I think they got out and they boat race them a little bit. I do think that maybe the Rams score a little bit at the end to make it look a little bit better, but I have it close to you. I have it 31-21, but it's like a late Rams score. Yeah. That they're down by a little bit more, and at the end of the game they get something in garbage time prevent.
No, I think that's very much in play, and I want to give a shout out to our guy Nick here, catching a flight out to LA, going to the game.
Travel safe,
yeah, very generous contribution for us. He calls 38-28. I do expect some points, so whether it's 31-21, I do expect some numbers that get up there a little bit. But I think you're right, and I think that the way that you've talked about it, it is weird that this game's not necessarily critical.
It's probably like the one you want dropped.
You have time getting into the home opener. It's not a conference game. There's no tiebreakers.
Drop that Miami. You can't drop that Ravens game.
Yeah, so it's we don't want to lose any game, but if they lost one, this is one of the least impactful of
not emotional. There'll be emotional scarring that hurts,
it'd be horrible.
But like then a week later when we look back at it, we'll be like, well, that sucked, but we can move on.
Yeah. We'll see where it is. So any final words for the people as they head into this amazing opportunity of a season?
Yeah, well, I got a bunch of words. We were talking a little bit offline here that, this is really the start of a new season for us. And we've been doing this for a couple of years. So one, I wanted to speak just to you that I'm grateful to have you as a co-host here on the show, and looking forward to riding out what I'm hoping is the season that we've been anticipating since we started doing this, and being a small part of Bills Mafia's enjoyment of a season like this. But yeah, just, it's been a long time to get here. We didn't take really much breaks in the process from 13 seconds to now. And the pressure cooker, if you had a pressure cooker on your stove right now, it is at an all-time max. And I can't wait to see how it goes this year. And we'll be back. I mean, I'm going to be talking to you here in a little over 24 hours again for a post-game show. So it's all come real fast here the last couple of weeks, but I couldn't be more excited for this Buffalo Bills season. It's really, if you would have told me, somebody tweeted it to me, they showed me the picture of every analyst at NFL Network picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl. And they're like, I wish I could screenshot this and send it back to myself in like 2018, right? Could you imagine just a few years later that just this universal outpour of love and affection for this team and everybody picking them, pinch me, so hopefully I don't wake up tomorrow from this dream. Hopefully we just continue to ride this dream into the game I predicted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo that. One of my favorite things in the world is getting to talk to you every week, and
Love you,
the
baby.
friendship that we've developed over our 4 years together here. And um, I think this is going to be a special year. And
Yeah.
all I can do, I understand the Super Bowl or bust mentality. I understand the expectations. I understand the anxiety and pressure that goes with that. All I can tell you guys is to enjoy every second. Listen to all the shows, watch all the pregame stuff, listen to the podcast, enjoy every single game that's floating out there and be able to just soak it all
Every
up.
single ribeye. Eat every single ribeye. Yeah.
Every single steak. Do your 1/11th to
That's
be
right.
able to get yourself ready. Because at the end, we don't know how it's gonna end. We don't know how it's gonna finish, and we all hope that it finishes the way that we want, but we just don't know exactly how those things are going to play out. So enjoy every second that we can. This is going to be an awesome journey together. We're going to be here for you, breaking down every single game for a preview, every single post game show. It's going to be fantastic. So make sure you're finding us, checking out everything that we have going on. We're really, really excited about everything that we're bringing you this season. We put in so much work to be able to get this ready for you, and it really means the world. So we've gotten so many nice messages here in the chat. You guys have been awesome tonight. Make sure that you're checking everything out there. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. Going on and give us a rating really makes a huge difference to subscribe to those things and to tell other people about what we have going on here and what we're doing. That really, really means a lot. So help us
And
out
it's
with that.
free.
And it's free. It's easy to
Costs
do.
nothing.
Yeah, you can go and dive in to be able to do that. And it just costs you that little finger click. That's all it takes.
That's it.
So we appreciate you guys. This is our final preview show before the season kicks off tomorrow. So we'll be with you guys tomorrow night live. Come back and join us. We will be here probably like 11:30, 11:45, ready to roll as soon as the game ends, and hopefully talking about a big, huge Buffalo Bills victory.
Cracking some jumbos in celebration, hopefully.
That's right. I can't wait. All right, guys. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are